Hello, thank you for joining me today. My name is Dr. Jennifer Wolf, and on behalf of University of the People, I'm going to record a video for you to use to help you write using APA style. So I'm going to talk just briefly about what APA style is and show you a paper that I have prepared for this video. I'm not going to get into what I'm writing about. So the topic, I'm just using the paper to give you examples. I'm also not going to go into the library to pull up resources. This video is strictly to show you how to apply the rules of APA formatting in your academic papers. So the first thing I want to talk about is what APA style is. So APA style is the American Psychological Association's style for academic papers. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So I'm going to start in the Learning Resource Center in UO People, and that's under resources. So you always have access to it. So I'm going to go into the Academic Honesty and APA Plagiarism portal. I have already created a video on how to avoid plagiarism, so I am not going to talk about that today, but I am going to recommend that you watch that video if you have not already. So I want to point out a couple of things for you to use. There is a tutorial and a refresher. So if you are brand new to academic writing, I am going to assume that you are not familiar with APA style, particularly if you're just coming out of high school or if you've just been at work for a few years and you haven't done any real college study. APA is probably going to be brand new to you. So you really need to take some time to study and learn the rules of APA writing so that you don't have to worry about it, and you'll know the rules, and then you can just move on with studying your discipline, computer science or business or health science, whatever your degree program is. So I would recommend you start with this tutorial. It's a video, short video, 3 minutes. And it just kind of walks you through some very kind of overall rules that we use in APA style. And hopefully it will lead you to some questions that you can ask yourself as you're watching the video. All right, so that's the best way to study is when you're watching a video or reading or listening to something, you ask yourself questions while you're engaged in study. And then the next part that you can go to is the refresher. And, a refresher usually means that you know a little bit, but you're just trying to remember the information. So this will work for you even if it's brand new information, and it's also in modules, so that, if you're not sure about in-text citations, you can always come back and study a little bit more because, like I said, you really want to understand APA formatting so that you don't have to worry about it while you're trying to write your papers. Okay, so what I have is a paper here. I'm going to walk you through the parts of a paper, which will be what you will do for each of your writing assignments. And then I'm going to take you back to the APA style web page to go through kind of some maybe higher priority sections, and then point out what you can do on your own. Okay, so what you're looking at here, like I said, is a paper that is similar to what you will write for your class. And I'm just going to kind of tell you what you're seeing, and then we'll come back to it in detail. All right, so this first page is called a title page, and you will come up with a title for your paper. So this is a title. Notice it's in bold and it's centered. So this whole page is centered. Notice the department, the college, the course, your instructor's name, and then the due date. Okay, so that's a title page, and you must have a title page for each of your written assignments, or sometimes we call them essays. Okay, so then we have an introduction. This is called a major heading. Notice it's centered and in bold. Notice the first line of a paragraph is indented. Then we have another heading, and the headings help the reader know what to expect. So it's sort of saying, okay, I'm going to talk about goal setting. Now I'm going to talk about an unsuccessfully achieved goal. Now I'm going to talk about a successfully achieved goal. So you really need to use headings to help guide your reader. Okay, so here we just go through our paper again, noticing the indented paragraphs. Then we come down to a heading. Now this is called a subheading. This is a level 2. So notice the major level 1 heading is centered. The level 2 heading is all the way what we call flush left. Another thing I do want to point out, you'll notice the left margin is flush and the right margin is what we call ragged. So don't use that block style. Use left justification. Sometimes, I'm sorry, that was centered. Sometimes we have students who want to block style, but do not do that. Use your left justification. Okay, and we go down, and here are some more headings. Now, sometimes you will have instructors tell you not to leave what we call an orphan heading. Okay, so this heading is all by itself, and the text that goes with it is on the next page. So sometimes an instructor doesn't want to see an orphan heading, but you only do that if your instructor tells you not to leave an orphan heading, because you're not supposed to add extra spaces in your paper. So I know it might look a little strange just to have this heading all by itself, but that's okay. Leave it like that unless your instructor tells you not to have an orphan heading and to go ahead and add spaces. Okay. Then notice we don't have a heading that says conclusion like we did where we had the introduction. Okay, we had an introduction heading, but we do not have a conclusion heading. So what you can do is say, in conclusion, and that tells your reader, okay, this is the final paragraph, and I'm kind of summarizing what I told the reader, okay? And then you always need a word count for your written assignments. The references page comes next. And notice how the references are formatted. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then that's it. Okay, so that is what a student paper will look like. Notice the student's name is nowhere on this paper, because when we peer assess, we don't want to know whose papers we're assessing. So always leave your name off of your papers. Okay, in other schools, they may not do that, but in UO People, leave your name off the paper. Okay, so now we're going to go to APA style webpage, and this is a great resource for you. I recommend that you bookmark this so you can always find it. Because it will pretty much answer every question you have as you're typing your paper and you can't remember what something's supposed to look like. You can come over here and notice the topics. And if you say, I can't remember what references are supposed to look like, here's your references section. Okay, now we're not going to talk about everything on this page because it would take us an hour and a half. And some things, quite honestly, you're probably not going to run into, um, right away. So your papers are going to be a little less extensive. So I'm not going to talk about tables and figures. I'm not going to talk about publication because you're not going to be publishing your papers. not going to talk about this. I'm mostly going to concentrate on what you need to know to make your paper look right and be formatted correctly. Okay, so let's get into that. Okay, if you notice on this web page, you can, if you go to the home page, there's lots of informations. You can, buy your own manual if you want to, and some people like to do that because they like to have it in front of them, and they like to, mark their pages and highlight. But, for right now, we're just going to kind of go to the general page and talk about, like I said, the things that your instructor expects to see in your written assignments. Okay, so first thing, the order of pages, and I showed you the other paper, but like I said, you always need a title page. Don't worry about an abstract unless your instructor wants one. And then you have the body of your paper, and then you have your references. You will not have footnotes, probably won't have tables or figures for a while, and then an appendices you won't have. So these are the things you need: title page, the text, and references. Okay, so that's the order of the pages, right? So title page setup, this is what I just showed you on this Word document, but notice the title of the paper. Okay, one thing I want to point out is you are supposed to have page numbers. So I took the page numbers off this table so I could just show you how to do that for yourself if you have Microsoft Word. If you're using Google Docs, it works basically the same way. Remember, if you use Google Docs, you can't upload the link. You have to upload the physical, well, the soft copy of the paper. So you can't just upload a link. So I recommend that you, if you use Google Docs, be sure you know how to upload that paper. So here are your page numbers. They go at the top of the page, and then they go all the way flush right. So that's how you insert your page numbers. Okay, so I'm going to move on, but you do have page numbers on a student paper. Okay, so there's your page number. Author, again, that would be the student name. That is not what we do at UO People, so don't do that. I want to point out that your entire paper is going to be double spaced, except on the title page, there's an extra space between the title and the beginning of the metadata. So the studies or the department, so this might be Department of Business, Department of Health Sciences, Department of Education, whatever paper you're writing this for, and then University of the People, and then your actual course, your instructor's name, and the due date. So this is the only place you're going to have an extra space. Okay, so this is what it would look like double spaced, but for the title page only, you put in an extra space. Okay, and so affiliation, course, instructor, due date. Okay, so that's what the title page looks like. And again, you must have one for every single written assignment that you submit. Okay, font is easy because although APA allows for different fonts, University of the People specifies Times New Roman 12 point. So all your papers are going to be Times New Roman. If you plan on typing directly into Moodle for your written assignments, it's really not going to work because you can't format, you can't select your font. So I know not everybody has Microsoft Word, and that's why I say Google Docs should work, but the font should always be Times New Roman 12 point. Okay, then we're going to talk about line spacing. And again, only double space, don't add extra spaces. I've seen some students do this. Don't do that. Sometimes I see students add an extra space for a new heading, don't do that. It's only double spaced throughout the entire paper. And make sure that you don't have anything like this because it adds extra space. So that should be 0, 0, and double. Okay. Okay, margins, 1 inch, always 1 inch. Now, sometimes you have to, if you have a long quote, you need to indent, but I'm not going to get into that right now because you're probably not going to run into that immediately. But I will just tell you that your margins on the left are 1 inch, your margins on the right also 1 inch, but again, ragged, not justified. Okay. Paragraph alignment and indentation. I see a lot of student papers that don't indent, so their paragraphs start flush left. That is not correct. So you need to indent the first line of every paragraph. Title page is centered, like I showed you here. Okay, that's the only place that you're going to center. And then block quotations, like I say, that's for a quote of 40 words or more. You're probably not going to run into that, but if you do, there's a special way to show a block quotation. Again, the headings are what tell your reader what is coming up and what to expect. You're probably not going to have tables and figures for a while. Your reference list is its own page and hanging indent, which I'll show you what that means. You're not going to have, probably for a while, appendices. Okay. All right, and then we talk about headings, and that's what I just showed you. So there are, I believe, 5 levels. So major, level 1, this is like introduction, okay, and then I showed you the level 2 headings, but you can see as you go, the headings change because that tells your reader to expect something different. So these are level 1, and then in this paper, there are level 2s right here. But still just one space. Okay, don't add that extra space because you think you should or anything like that. Okay, only double space throughout your paper. Then we talk about sample papers. I'm not going to go through these. I'm just going to show you that they are there. So if you kind of want to get an idea of what a student paper looks like, you can go here. It's kind of busy, right? But it's there for you to see. Major headings, subheadings. Okay, so this is a great place to go in and make sure that you are doing everything correctly so that when you turn in your assignment, you don't get points deducted because you haven't followed APA rules. Okay, now we're going to talk about in-text citations. So these are citations that are within the body of your paper because you read something from an author and you want to include it in your paper. And again, I talked about citations in the plagiarism video, avoiding plagiarism video, so please take a look. But this is an in-text citation. It's within the text. It is part of the sentence. Notice the ending punctuation goes after the citation. So sometimes I see students do this because the sentence is over and then they add their citation, but that is not correct. The citation becomes part of the sentence. Okay, so if you take a look here on APA style, they will tell you just kind of some general rules about about in-text citations. I'm not going to go through all those. I just want to tell you that there are some rules with citations, whether you paraphrase, meaning you put something in your own words, or you quote directly. So please study these, how you're supposed to format your citations, because you don't want to turn in a paper that's wrong just because you didn't take the time to make sure you are doing things correctly. Okay. So those are in-text citations. Now, mechanics of style means kind of what the paper is going to physically look like. So punctuation helps your reader know when to stop, when to pause. Okay, so spacing after a period, if you're a little bit older, maybe you went to high school or college, 10 years ago, maybe before computers came out, you used to hit two spaces after your period. But in APA 7th edition, we moved to just one space. So it used to look like this. Okay, so we would put two spaces between all our sentences, and that is a very challenging habit to get out of, but just try to focus. If you're younger and you grew up on computers in school, you probably only put one space. But if you're used to using two, you need to go back to just one space. And then the comma is what we call an Oxford comma. It means if you have three or more items in a series, you put a comma before the and. So you might say, well, that's kind of a silly little rule. Why does it matter? Well, it matters because we want our papers to be uniform so that our reader doesn't have to struggle with, oh, well, this person uses two spaces and this person uses one, and this person doesn't use a comma and this person does. So we just want all our papers to be uniform so we all follow the same rules, and then the reader can concentrate on what the writer is telling them. So just pay attention here. You might think these rules shouldn't matter, but they do. So it's up to you to come in and learn these, what you might consider kind of an unimportant rule, but it is important. Okay. Bias-free language, I'm going to let you read those on your own. Basically, it's just so we don't sound like we're kind of talking badly about other people. So we don't want to say, an old person did this or that. Okay, we want to be respectful. And so here, you're going to see how you should phrase, you know, if you're who you're talking about in a way that's respectful, but does get your point across to the reader, okay? Because we don't want the reader to be confused, okay? Tables and figures, I'm not going to talk about other than just to show you what I'm talking about when I talk about a table, okay? So this would be a table, and there are rules for how it's supposed to look. Again, so your reader doesn't have to struggle with, well, I can't find that information. I don't even know what he's talking about. Okay, so that's a table. And then for figures, that might be something that you want to put in there to help people understand what you're saying. But there is a way to format them, so don't just take it for granted that you know what to do. Okay, really come in here, take a look at this page so you know that you're formatting everything correctly. Okay, now I do want to talk about references. So I showed you the reference section in this paper. Notice it starts its own page. We have plenty of room up here, but the references section is on its own page so that if somebody says, ooh, I want to look up that information, they don't have to scroll through the paper. They can just go right to the back and there's the section, okay? So references are formatted according to what type of reference they are. So I can look at this and know that this reference that this is in this paper is in kind of like a chapter within a book. And I can tell just by looking at that, this is the name of the chapter, this is the name of the book, these are the page numbers. This is similar to a URL, so a website link, but it's a DOI, direct object identifier, and that just means it's permanent. So sometimes, when you click on a URL and it says this page has moved, well, with a DOI, that's never going to happen. Okay, and again, I can tell you this is a journal. This is the name of the article. This is the name of the journal, volume, issue, the page numbers that this article is on, and then again, notice a DOI. We prefer to use DOIs in your references if you can find one, because again, it's permanent. But if you can only find a URL, that's okay too. All right, so basic principles for references: author, date, title, and source, because our reader wants to be able to find that information for themselves. So that's why we put it all in there. It matters how it's formatted. Look at this, it tells you where to put a period. Okay, so come in, study the different types of references. Okay, because they're formatted differently. Notice paper, a data set, so like something you might see in a study where they talk to 18 to 25-year-olds and this is what they found out, podcasts or YouTube, and then something on a website. Okay, so there are all different ways to format. What I notice with newer students is they like to use websites a lot, and that's okay as long as the website is something that you can trust. So, you don't want to just Google and take the first answer you get. Okay, make sure that the websites you're looking at are something that you can trust. When we're talking about Wikipedia, Wikipedia itself is not a reliable source, but I'm going to show you how you can use Wikipedia to help you write your papers. Okay, so what I've done here is I've just Googled collaborative learning, and I went to Wikipedia. So as I was saying, with Wikipedia, anybody can contribute. Anybody can write a post in Wikipedia, and there can be accurate information and there can be inaccurate information. And there's just no way to tell for sure because Wikipedia doesn't have the resources to have fact checkers on their millions of pages. But what you can do with Wikipedia is you can read through, and when you find something that you want to use in your paper, you can go to the Wikipedia writer's source. Okay, so for example, I'm reading this collaborative learning redefines student-teacher relationship. Okay, that sounds good. So what these two numbers mean, the writer of this post used two sources to add to their argument. So you can click on that little number, and here is the actual article that the Wikipedia author used. So unfortunately, there you can see that URL has expired. So what you can then do is go into the library and see if you can find that article. I'm not going to do that now because this is about using APA. So we have a video on using the library, but let's say we go to this resource and notice there it is. Okay, so this is the website that the author used. Um, I don't want to take up too much time, but that's how you can use Wikipedia. All right, but in your reference, you're not gonna put something in your paper that says Wikipedia because you didn't use Wikipedia. You used the source that the Wikipedia writer used. Okay, and that's different. Okay, so different types of resources, periodicals. That's, you might think about a magazine or a journal, books, edited books. Okay, so it's different. reports. So you might have a government report. Notice the different types of resources that you can come across. Okay, so podcast, TED Talks, YouTube. So just pay attention to what you're looking at. Okay, web page, because it's formatted differently. It's not that hard to do, but you do have to pay attention, so that in your paper, you are formatting correctly for your reader. Okay, so just go to whatever you have, and they'll give you an example of how you should format your source. Now, again, this is different from an in-text citation, and that's where you have to come back and see how to format an in-text citation. Okay. Now, I don't want to talk too much about grammar, but I will say in the Learning Resource Center, there is a portal for if you're if English is not your native language, and sometimes even if it is. So if you want to go check your grammar, that you know that you're using English correctly, come to the English Language Resources portal in the LRC and test yourself, and just make sure that you really do know how to read and write and speak English correctly. Okay, so that's what I wanted to talk about today, was APA style. I know this went kind of fast, but I didn't want to, make you watch an hour-long video. I think my point that I'm trying to get across is that APA style matters, that how you format your papers is important, and not to treat it like it doesn't matter and that you can just kind of turn in something that's close enough. Okay, really make it a point to format your paper correctly, and learn those rules. So again, you can just concentrate on learning the material, learning the content, without having to constantly check whether you're following APA rules. Okay, so again, this is the website. If you just put in Google APA style website, you'll get this. You'll get this page. Okay, and it looks like this. And then what you are going to want to do is go to Style and Grammar Guidelines. Okay. So I hope this video has been helpful for you. Anytime you have questions, reach out to your instructor, because they are the best resource for what you should be doing in your classroom. And, that's what they're there for, is to answer your questions. All right. So with that, thank you for joining me, and take care.